This video contains spoilers for Chainsaw Man. With this week's episode of Chainsaw Man easily being the most insane one yet, I thought it would be a great time to make a video on why Chainsaw Man stands out in the mediums of anime and manga. While there are plenty of reasons to love this series and give the new anime a chance, one thing stands out in particular: pacing. The story is constantly moving at a breakneck speed, and you barely have any time to catch your breath at all before the next shock or revelation is thrust upon you. Seriously, you might not get it if you haven't experienced the series for yourself, but it gets to the point that I'm pretty sure I read the last 40 chapters or so in one sitting, and I usually read a volume or less in a day if I'm reading through a manga. Of course, pacing alone doesn't make a manga great, but because Chainsaw Man excels in fundamental aspects of storytelling like characters, plot, emotional impact, and features some of the most intense action sequences in shonen manga thus far, the pacing is the icing on top of the cake and sets Chainsaw Man apart from the rest of its peers. Really, the pacing stands out so much that it's become an entire meme by itself. This is why Chainsaw Man is different and why that's a great thing. A lot of the manga I've read so far work in the exact opposite way that Chainsaw Man does. So many series rely on years and years of foreshadowing and build up to create hype for future events. The reveal of the big bad who will be the final challenge for our protagonist, the build up to the greatest fight the world has ever seen, or our protagonist finally achieving their big goal after sometimes decades of pursuing that goal. I'm not saying that this is a bad approach at all, and clearly it works since so many series have used this to their advantage. The One Piece world feels so alive because it's foreshadowed and slowly revealed to us over time, with so many moving parts shifting over the years. Part of why we care so much about Naruto becoming the Hokage is because we've been waiting for 700 chapters to see it finally happen. And an incredible fight like Ichigo vs Aizen is almost impossible to achieve without creating a huge story which continuously points towards this climactic confrontation. I've recently been watching Gintama, and I personally love the fact that it's slow paced and gives us time to focus on each individual character in the ensemble cast. Otherwise, I wouldn't care for them so deeply when it's time for a serious arc. However, not every story needs to be written in the same way to be equally effective. While I love the different series I just mentioned, I sometimes find it really difficult to get others into anime because I'm constantly repeating the same line. Well, wait until it gets to the really crazy part. Sometimes it's even hard to fully get into a series myself. Part 1 of Chainsaw Man is less than 100 chapters long, so there isn't time to create massive build-up like these other series do. There is definitely foreshadowing, which you realize quite clearly by the end, but there's not really any time to stop and think about what's to come. That's because the plot is driven forward constantly, with every page turn being more exhilarating than the last, and just like the characters themselves, it feels like we as readers have absolutely no control over how quickly this world is changing and evolving. It's almost impossible to describe exactly how intense the atmosphere of the story feels because of this. It feels like almost anything is within the realm of possibility, yet it never felt to me like Fujimoto totally jumped the shark and started writing absurd events into the story just because he could. The shocks that come throughout the story always have a blatant purpose behind them, and we're still able to become emotionally invested in each character despite not spending large amounts of time with them or seeing each individual's backstory. I think this week's episode, as well as last week's, both perfectly encapsulate what people mean by Chainsaw Man pacing. While this Katana Man arc is definitely not the peak of this style of pacing within the manga, I think it's the first real example of it. Well, it's pretty normal in shonen manga for a new group of strong antagonists to emerge from the shadows after our heroes have had one victory. Usually this is played up a bit more, or some series of events occur before they go straight for the main character. Think of the Akatsuki from Naruto. The different members all have staggered entrances into the plot and come into conflict with both Naruto and Sasuke over a long period of time. Chainsaw Man pacing is like Pain just shows up to the Leaf Village and blows it up in part 1 before we see Itachi for the first time. And then Sakura dies, I don't know. Think about it. In the last episode, Katana Man just shows up, briefly states his motivations, fucking shoots Denji, dies, and then gets back up and beats up Aki. Perfectly succinct. And Himeno's death is an even better example. Even though she's taken out of the story quite quickly, her death has a ton of emotional weight behind it, with us immediately seeing and understanding her connection with Aki a few episodes ago, and her sacrificing herself only for the Ghost Devil to be taken out so quickly and brutally is absolutely crushing. All the more so because it happens within the blink of an eye. While core aspects of this confrontation were foreshadowed, such as Aki's sword and the ability to sacrifice oneself to a devil, we barely got any time to speculate about those things or ponder them because we saw them right in front of our eyes so quickly. Whether this is a bad thing or not completely depends on your personal taste, but I think it's awesome and a super refreshing way to approach a shonen manga. Episode 9, this week's episode, is just as exciting. After seeing so many public safety officers get gunned down in the previous episode, watching Makima just get up and quickly kill everyone in her way was so shocking, and something I didn't expect to see so early in the story when I first read the manga. The scenes of her crushing her enemies all the way from Kyoto were even more intense, and it felt like it came straight out of a Junji Ito manga with absolutely no explanation. And of course, we all knew from the very beginning that there was a lot more to Makima than originally met the eye, but to see these things revealed so quickly is both really rewarding and makes you want to turn the pages even faster than you can ever hope to read. And of course, Kobeni is just overpowered out of nowhere. Again, it's not something that feels out of place once you've read through the story, but in the moment it's such a shock, and that's what makes readers so invested in this manga. Now, I won't go into manga only territory in this video because I was hoping just to make a short video for people who are keeping up with the anime right now, but I will say that this pacing gets even more insane in the next few arcs. Looking back at some of the chapter counts for these arcs, I'm surprised that some of the ones which I consider to be the most impactful or important only last for a dozen chapters or so. There's one devil in particular which I would love to make a video on in the future that makes one of the biggest impacts in the whole series while barely having any screen time. If you've watched my channel much at all, you'll know that I don't think lots of screen time is a necessity when trying to make a big impact with a character, and sometimes one appearance seemingly out of nowhere builds more hype and even mystery than hundreds of chapters of build-up does. Every story is different though. I'm not saying the latter is bad whatsoever. I'm instead just saying that Chainsaw Man is unique and easy to distinguish from other series because of its pacing in particular. And we should all be celebrating that individuality because it is incredibly refreshing. Especially in a medium that seems to rely on tropes so heavily, we need series that will break away from the norm. And that's all for today. Sorry this video isn't too long, but I'm hoping that with a more succinct format, I'll be able to put out videos on some really specific topics that wouldn't work with a longer runtime. I'm currently working on an Attack on Titan script, but if you have any other ideas, I would love to see them in the comments. Thank you for watching if you made it to the end, and see you next time.